Okay, episode 3 of chatting shit about the Labyrinth Cup. Trudi, Spock, and JKG. How are we all?
Very good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Good. A lot of variety in the picks tonight, which I'm quite excited about, because I've found that this month's chatting shit tends to go on a lot of tangents anyway, because there's so much in the meta. I think this could be an interesting one for sure. We're going to start with Trudi, I believe I said, who's the highest ranked, who's got the highest ranked pick tonight. So we'll go that order.
Yep, because I'm choosing the beautiful Alolan Ninetales. That's supposed to be tails. Didn't work. Yeah, because it's real good. For reasons I'm about to outline. So here's the starting. My starting premise is this: Weatherball is pretty busted, and you've had loads of other people talk about other Weatherball Pokemon, and really, A9 is the best user of Icy Weatherball, and in addition to that, Flyers is one of the core typings that people are building their team around for Labyrinth, and therefore you want the best Icy Weatherballer, which is Alolan Ninetales. That's it.
That's it.
As well as looking absolutely sexy all the time. It's another she Pokemon in my heart because she's pretty. She comes with a little bit of flexibility, like some interesting movesets. I've played around with both Powder Snow and Charm, and both of them have their places. The first team I put together of Pokemon that I just loved. It's like, oh, yeah, I love you. And then I went to a practice tournament and got absolutely roughly rogered by an Alolan Ninetales in practically every other team. And then I was like, well, I guess I love Alolan Ninetales as well now, because it's a badass. And so there we go. That's how love starts, really. That's a bad message for young girls. And boys.
That's it. We don't discriminate on chatting shit, Trudy. That's it. Yeah.
No, that's fair. So yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. I was really surprised because Alolan Ninetales here. I was surprised by you picking this. Because Alolan Ninetales here means that you can't have Frostlass.
I know. But for me, Frostlass suffers from the stepping stones of, well, if I have that, then I can't have that, which means that I have to compromise on that, which means I have to compromise on that. I think my preferred ghost is Drifblim, and I think A9 is my preferred ice, so Frostlass is just doubly squeezed out in two directions. I don't think Frostlass is as strong here as she has been in other places. I think the variety is too much for her. Yeah.
So I think the problem I have with Frostlass, and it pains me to say it because Frostlass is one of my favourites, is that there's just too many water types. There's so many Politoads going around, and if you miss the Vigoroth, which is why you're taking your ghost, really. Well, that's what you're aiming for, the Vigoroth, I guess. If you miss the Vigoroth, you can so easily end up versus a Politoad, and that's a real struggle. And I think there's ghosts like Drifblim, as you say, that have more versatility.
But there you are. You've also brought me back to the A9 dilemma, which is Charm or Powder Snow. Did I say it right?
Yeah. I think there's the other dilemma with A9, I guess. If you go Charm, you don't need to worry about the charge moves, I guess. You're only going to Weather Balls. But if you go Powder Snow, obviously then you've got the choice between Psyshock or Dazzling Gleam, I guess.
Yeah.
Second. I don't know
DG doesn't really pick you up anything, to be honest. I had a good look.
It's quite a nice nuke, I think, Dazzling Gleam. It can catch people out if you're not prepared, and I think it works quite well in the mirror, I think, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's the only stab unresisted move in the mirror.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, I think it's a tough one because it's not resisting fighting other than Ninetales, and I think Psyshock, because, obviously Weather Ball's a great move, but Psyshock for that extra damage on fighting types, which you want your Ice type to deal with, which you want your Fairy type to deal with, might have play as well. I don't think it's clear cut at all, personally.
I think Psyshock is specifically better for Toxic Rogue, obviously.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the main fighting type that we see.
Mm.
Yeah, makes sense. I guess Dazzling Gleam's advantage will be for the darks, but if that's mostly Mandibuzz, then Ice is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or Xylaus as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess it does about 400% as well.
Yeah, but the Weather Balls will hurt as well.
Either Powder Snow or Charm, you're not getting to Dazzling Gleam on Xylaus.
No.
Yeah, so I dutifully, so having been rogered by A9 in my first practice, in my second practice, I ran a Powder Snow A9, and the only thing that wrecked me, that really surprised me as a Powder Snow A9, was the Charm A9, and then I was like, hold the phone. So that took me down the dark alley of looking really genuinely at, do I run Charm or do I run Powder Snow? And the Charm picks up the waters.
Yeah, it's very hard. Oh, sorry, go on, Trudi.
No, you go on.
It's very hard to build a team that isn't weak to Charm here, or that doesn't have good counters. On the flip side of that coin, there's not much here that is weak to Charm. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, Charm's fairly neutral against everything. So yeah, in this cup anyway, from what it seems, because we're not seeing that many steel, not seeing that many poison, and the only dark types really are Xylaus, Mandibuzz, and it's pretty, and Sableye as well. Yeah.
Sableye.
Yeah, Sableye.
Not enjoy a Charm A9. Now, the other thing is that I discovered when I was running Charm on my A9 is that you get the benefit of running Powder Snow, because the Venusaur skips as soon as it sees it, and then you can be like, and just try whatever else comes in.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm very sorry about this. So, as long as you are incredibly lucky, then you can have the benefit of both.
Yeah. I think, as much as it pains me to say it, I think both are viable. I think it has new toy syndrome to a certain extent with Weather Ball, so I think most will run Powder Snow. But absolutely, you could 100% build a team around Charm Ninetales, and because it's got Weather Ball now, Venusaur doesn't absolutely batter it either. So.
Venusaur's still getting to moves a lot faster, but Weather Ball mitigates the obvious Charm problem that you're very slow to your moves. I think you're only 9 seconds to a Weather Ball, which feels incredibly slow for Weather Ball, but it's better than.
I think I quite like Powder Snow in this situation just because you're getting to the Weather Balls so fast, and we've been saying that Weather Balls are quite overpowered at the moment, and I think it's very important to get to as many as possible. So. And also with the nature of this meta, I think there's going to be a lot of mons which have a lot of spammy moves, such as Weather Ball, as Body Slam, Vigoroth, and all sorts of things like that. So I think getting to as many as possible is very critical here. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I agree. I've certainly, I personally wouldn't. I'd be looking at Paris now more than Charm, but I think if I wanted a Charm user, I'd probably go one that didn't take up the ice slot, because as I say, I think Frostless is playable. I think Dugong is nice as well, which hasn't seen a lot of love. I think there's room for Articuno. Yeah, so I'd
running Articuno, you can't run Zapdos.
I know. It's a serious issue. It's a serious issue. But
Please, anything but Zapdos. Thanks.
Yeah.
Someone who has to play you. Well, Zapdos is petrifying.
Zapdos is a lot of fun, but I think there's other things I like better in Zapdos' type categories. So I don't think Zapdos will make it onto my team in the end. But yeah, I think I'd perhaps run a Charmer with more versatile moves that didn't take the ice slot. So I've always been a big fan of Gramble for the close combat and the crunches. Although now we have Weather Ball, maybe that changes things a lot. But yeah. Yeah, any further thoughts on Alolan Ninetales, anyone?
I did a practice tournament tonight and didn't bring... Well, I brought one Alolan Ninetales counter, which I'll talk about in a minute. One was not enough. I got it safe switched against me every game. Got absolutely wrecked and noped out of the tournament. So, so yeah, Ninetales is pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good. It's definitely something you're gonna have to prepare for this month. It just like I say, it's a good month.
Why don't you tell us about that one counter? Oh, sorry, Trudy, go on.
No, it's all right. We can move on.
You sure?
We did just all agree that it's a lovely Pokemon, right? And we also
it's really good.
As well.
Yeah, really good.
Right. You just crack on with your bad self then.
Yeah. Go on, James. Let's hear about the counter.
So my only A9 counter tonight, but it's in my team first and foremost as a Vigoroth counter. I think you've alluded to this already. It's Jellicent. I looked at Drifblim, but I think eventually when I build one, I want the flying slot for Mandibuzz. So I was looking for a non-flying ghost. Something to block the Vigoroth safe swap that I initially thought we'd see all month. Maybe we still will. I think we'll see Vigoroth, whether we see it as a safe swap. Jellicent has a bit of new toy syndrome as well, but it's bulky. It resists a lot of useful things. It resists ice, which is going to be everywhere. It takes on A9, which I was terrified of. So... And quite often you land a Shadow Ball because people think you're going to bait them with Bubble Beam. And that's always fun. That's always really satisfying. Don't run Bubble Beam. It's a terrible move.
You heard it here first. Yeah.
Probably not first, to be fair.
What's your other option? Bubble Beam, Shadow Ball, and
Ice Beam.
Oh.
I think if you run Bubble, and not that we'll see many Obstagoon, but just as a testament to how bulky Jellicent is and that it can hit quite hard. If you're in Bubble Ice Beam, I believe you beat Obstagoon in the zeros. Like it's
from using it in GBL. I think you have to go down a shield to beat Obstagoon.
Ah, okay.
And you have to do that late on in the matchup in case it gets a boost.
Yep.
But I could be wrong. Maybe you can win the even ones and just nobody played that out with me. I wasn't running Bubble, that's why.
Ah, there you go. Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
You should run Bubble. Not just because of the Obstagoon, but the only thing Hex gives you is more energy, but it gives you 12 instead of 11. Both of your charge moves cost 55, so you're always using multiples of 11. So that extra 1 energy, you'd have to get to 3 charge moves to see any benefit from it. whereas Bubble gives you extra damage the whole time. So don't run Hex here, I think.
That was some nice bit of maths. I like that.
Well, there you go.
Pretty smart. Despite
yeah.
how they look.
Well,
There's an argument that the Hex energy is useful with Bubble Beam because it's a different energy cost. But then you've got Hex and Bubble Beam, and you have to actually do some damage at some points, and that only really leaves Shadow Ball.
yeah.
So you can be walled a lot more easily.
Yeah, I think I agree completely with the moveset, and I think being able to something we've talked a lot about recently, James, is sort of like monsters that are versatile, get beat, but they don't have the piss taken out of them.
Yeah.
Bubble allows you to take the piss out of Vigoroth. Hex allows you to beat Vigoroth. I think that's and you can,
right, because you can get Vigoroth you can get it low with an Ice Beam and then just farm it all the way down, and it can do nothing. You have to watch Bulldoze. I'm not going to say Bulldoze hurts. You can't go too mad. You don't take 3.
Bulldoze does something. Whereas,
if you find yourself about to tank a second Bulldoze, you've probably gone too far. I think it does something like 40%.
that's quite a lot.
Yeah.
It's a 60 energy move. I mean,
yeah.
I thought only doing 40% was pretty
Yeah.
good.
Well, Jellicent's tanky, and it's not weak to it, so I thought it wouldn't have done that much.
Yeah, so
but...
it's neutral, non-stab.
Yeah.
On a Bulkymon from a relatively Bulkymon as well. So you take a couple.
And a Bulkymon that hasn't taken any fast move damage from counter.
Yeah, because the counters do, I assume, 1 HP.
I thought so.
Of which you have plenty. So.
We've just been speaking about Weather Ball. Obviously, Jellicent being the water type rules Politoed out.
It does. That is the cost.
Right, it is a cost.
I think, I mean, I don't think Politoed's essential here. Politoed's the new and shiny and exciting thing.
I'm talking about Jellicent.
Yeah, sure. No, they're both new, exciting, shiny things. That's a good point. That's a good point. Well made. Yeah, absolutely. It pushes Politoed out of your team, and it means your only remaining Mudboy option would be like Unova Stunfisk. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
How does it do against all the other ghosts?
Whoever, the usual. Whoever lands the Shadow Ball wins.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's ghost types. Yeah.
I can tell you a bit more about this. Because I was looking at Jellicent early on. You would think it beats Frostlass, but because Powder Snow is charging, so you beat Frostlass in the zeros because you tank a Shadow Ball and Frostlass doesn't. But Powder Snow charges considerably faster than Bubble. Well, not considerably faster, but fast enough to the point where you're losing the 1s and the 2s, unless you've got a couple of Bubble leads.
Oh, because they're doing 8 energy, yeah.
Yeah. Marowak is an interesting one, because if it has Shadow Bone, which is generally speaking what Marowaks run these days, Marowak can't beat you in even shields, even if it baits. Shadow Ball, however, becomes very baity. So yeah, it's, and of course Sableye wrecks it. So
yeah. Well,
it's not
Sableye King Ghost, isn't it?
That problem.
Yeah, as does Drifblim, because again, it's well, I don't know.
Yeah,
If
Drifblim's good.
switches in, then it's not getting to its Shadow Balls any faster than you are until the third one.
Yeah.
If you wanted to avoid that, you could run Hex yourself. And if Drifblim tries to bait you, it's going to have a bad time.
Yeah. It's by no means King Ghost, is it? But it's it's not getting.
Well, Sableye takes that title.
But Ghost isn't a bulky category though, so I guess being, one of the only bulky ghosts is a pretty USP.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sort of what I like about it as well is I know I just mentioned the fact that you can't run Politoed as a bad thing, but on the flip side of that coin, it could also be a good thing. You can condense your water type and your ghost type into one slot. Marowak as well has that going for it as well.
If the
Yeah, but then
Go
you're nudging out half of something else, and everything just falls.
And that's
cards flies down.
it's true for every pick here. Every dual type
Yeah.
pick obviously locks 2 slots, and if they're both high value slots, and water and ghost are high valuable real estate. Someone called them on the last episode. That's a cost, but and you have to look at whether that mon is worth that higher cost. At the end of the day, you can't pick 18 things.
No.
So it's okay to lose some types. Please tell me there are 18 types.
There are. To my
Otherwise I look
knowledge.
like an idiot.
Yeah.
I'll take it. So you're going to lose. You're going to waste some types just because you can't pick that many things.
Yeah, I
mean, that's something that I've noticed is actually that I'm a lot of the time picking my lines of 3 based on types that the other person doesn't have, not what they do have. It's not like a normal Silph meta where everyone has coverage in all of the core areas.
Right, yeah.
Like if I face a team that hasn't got fire, I'm like, oh, Beskab, it is time to go on a little romp. But you know what I mean? But and it's plausible you would see a team without water, at which point, A9 has a lovely time. So there's lots of interesting things about this meta that are different to other classical metas.
I think you probably will see a water on most teams. I think it's such a good sort of defensive typing. I'd be very surprised if somebody doesn't run water. But going back to that, I want to say that with the Politoed matchup with Jellicent, if the Politoed's running Blizzard, then Jellicent's pretty much walling it, which is nice. Yeah. So you might not have the Politoed, but you're beating it, which could be a win in a way. So
and I assume if they're running Earthquake, you have to. I guess in the 1s and 2s you probably just lose because they start outpacing you.
I think it's Beatty. I think it's Beatty.
Yeah.
Even then.
That was my feeling as well. Because, like I say, Jellicent's bulky and it's resisting the weather balls. So if you don't fall for the bait, then you're looking good and you can file some shadow balls.
Yeah. I just would have thought they'd outpace you because it's only 14 turns to subsequent earthquakes.
Yeah.
I have to look at that again.
I think
one general usage thing I've found with Jellicent is the Shadow Ball, because it's bulky, which is great, and Shadow Ball's a hard hitting move. It's often not quite as hard hitting as you'd like, and you can get yourself into a position where you've done a great lump to something, but another Shadow Ball would be far too much. I think firstly that's a great reason to run Bubble instead of Hex. You've got way more chance of farming something down. But secondly, it's good to have in mind that you're probably going to want to hit. If you hit something with a Shadow Ball, you might want to be in a position to swap out and farm it down and try and get an energy lead for a different matchup.
Yeah.
Obviously it's very situational, but it's going to be something to have in mind to turn that disadvantage of not quite killing something into an advantage that you can farm it down maybe before it gets to another move or something.
Yeah, no, that is true. And one thing I'd say about Jellicent as well, having used it a couple of times, is that if you're going to use it, I would suggest being quite proactive with shields, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you're stuck with Jellicent and 2 shields, and your opponent's got something with 2 shields, unless it's something you hard wall, because generally you're going to be outpaced here. Yeah, and you're going to get to a point where by the time you get into the 3rd Ice Beam or Shadow Ball, if you even get there, it's going to be massively overkill on the amount of HP the opponent's got left because you've done so many bubbles to get there.
Yeah, don't save your shields for Jellicent.
Mm.
Give them to something that needs them more, but also that can get value out of them.
Yeah.
And it's try to beat the opponent's shields out as well.
Yeah. I mean, Jellicent's really good at like softly losing the zeros. So, which doesn't sound great. Like, oh, it loses loads of zeros matchups. Great, yeah, thanks. But it tends to land a big move and then not quite KO and then die. So that maybe their second move or something. And quite often that's fine. But you just have to plan for that. If that catches you by surprise, then it's just a disadvantage. You've just lost.
Yeah.
But if you've planned for it,
it's no use pairing it. It's no use pairing it with Reggie Rock, is it? You're not farming anything down with that. You know, you want to be.
Yeah. Reggie Steele, Reggie Rock, and Jellicent. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just want to touch just a little bit more on the water type, because I know it's something that we've discussed a fair bit, the comparison between Politoed and Jellicent. So like I said, in the early practices I was running Jellicent and quite liked it. Then I started running Politoed and quite liked it. But then I thought, do I like Politoed because it's really fast and spammy and he's quite good generally? And do I like Jellicent because it's a ghost rather than because it's the water and it's got the Vig capability? So could I replace Jellicent with any ghost, and could I replace Politoed with any weather ball user? So the practice tournament I've just done tonight, I did try Zero Water, and A9 was a serious issue. I think I would agree that water is an important type, and it doesn't immediately come across that way, because there's not a great deal that it's super effective on here. Like, yeah, fine, there's Marowaks knocking around, but there's other ways to handle Marowak. Plenty of other ways to handle Marowak. But other than that, there's nothing that particularly comes across as making water good. So despite water not being super effective against ice and not being the sort of go-to counter, I think it's an important consideration for sure.
Just want to say on Jellicent, what I like about it is I feel you can be quite unpredictable with if you're running Bubble Beam or Ice Beam or Shadow Ball. It's quite hard to know what's coming your way to start with, so I think that's quite a nice advantage. And I think it's almost like a bit of I don't want to say an upgrade on Mantine, but you're more likely to get off a high damage move off on the Jellicent than the Mantine. So with Mantine, you're only really getting a non-stab Ice Beam at best most of the time, which doesn't do that much. But Jellicent, you have that nuke there available a bit more easily, so I think that's quite important for it. So I think it can work quite well in this meta for sure. And I think Ghost is critical, obviously, we were talking about big safe switches and everything. So you need a Ghost type for sure.
You may never actually use it as a counter swap to a Vig safe swap, because I think people are only going to safe swap Vig if you don't have a Ghost. Maybe people are braver than I think they are.
But then he's not running a Ghost.
Yeah, that's a fair question.
But it's not awful. It's not awful to say.
But then I feel that way about all of the types. And actually, when you look through, everyone's got to compromise somewhere. And when you look through teams, there are teams without fires. There are some teams without water. There are teams without Ghost, and that's what I'm saying when I say your strategy is based on what people leave out, not what they have.
Yeah, absolutely. You're looking for the gaps. More so than normal.
Yeah.
More so than normal.
Okay, well, let's move on to Stuart and your pick.
All right, so my idea for this is we've been talking already about ways to stop the Vigoroth safe switch, and we've been talking about using Ghost. And my suggestion that I'm going to bring tonight is using something more offensive. My pick here is Toxicroak. Pokedex 454 for those wanting to know. And what I like about Toxicroak is it's just a fighter which also resists the other fighting types. And I mean, I think we've all used Toxicroak before. We all kind of know what it can do, but I just feel it's going to be really strong in this meta. And there's lots of things that it can do very well. And I think it can work as a safe switch because there's not too many psychics around. I haven't seen so far in Labyrinth. There's not too many confusion users or anything. So there's quite a bit of dark floating about. So I think Toxicroak has a really good role here. So that's my feeling.
Yeah, do you know what? When this cup first dropped, I really liked the look of Toxicroak, because it's like we've spoken about previously. You'll see the list of the top 10 mons, and they're all weak to counter, and Vigoroth's up there. So it looks quite appealing. But I can't. Well, the reason I didn't like it initially was because I wanted my poison type to beat Charmers. So I stayed away from it, and then as it turns out, we haven't had any Charmers, or very few Charmers. Yeah. So it doesn't really have to worry about sort of wasting a charm resistance either, which is an added bonus.
Yeah, well the thing is, the best poison sort of other poison alternative I think in this cup is Venusaur, and as we've been saying, Venusaur's not really kind of feeling like it's got a huge role in this cup so far with the lack of charm, and it's just not seeming like a very grassy meta. Maybe that will change because there's a lot of Politoed running amok, and be good to nail those. But I think Toxicroak to deal with those Vigoroths because that's going to be there all month. And although Toxicroak it loses to AWAC, if it lands a Mud Bomb, it's good news for the Toxicroak. It is. If you can farm up, get a Mud Bomb ready, and then an AWAC potentially in the back and unshielded, a Mud Bomb would knock it out potentially. So
it does the kind of chunk of damage to AWAC that can leave AWAC farmable by something else again, which like a bubble jellicent, or maybe not. It's a soft loss. Whereas I think if you safe swap Toxie and they've got Driftblim, you're in maybe a little more trouble.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Driftblim is similar with Toxicroak as it is with Vigoroth. It's not good news, but essentially you pair the two together, Driftblim to stop the other fighters. Or I also had a look. This is another interesting one of pairing Toxicroak with Obstagoon, because those two cover the weaknesses quite nicely. Because obviously the Obstagoon's beating Driftblim. There's also quad weak counter, but the Toxicroak resists counter. So they're doing a similar job, but they have different strengths, and they can work very nicely together. It's a combination I saw today. So yeah, I just think there's a lot of play for Toxicroak in team building here, because I don't feel that it's typing with poison and fighting. I don't think there's that much competition for those types. So yeah. I just think it can work really well.
All the good fighters are banned, so
yeah.
Well, sorry, all the other good fighters are banned. Toxie is a good fighter. I should.
Yeah. It's always been there. We've always used it. So yeah.
But I did try running it, and I found it lacking, and I can't really put my finger on why. I think I don't know.
I have a theory.
Go on.
We've just been talking about weather balls. Weather ball users, Vigoroth users. Vigoroth with Body Slam. It's all spammy. It's all hitting super hard. It's all got stab. Toxie has Mud Bomb, and it's not stab. So the opportunity cost of picking a more necessary Pokemon in the typing slot, that opportunity cost isn't gone here. But the opportunity cost to run a weather ball user or something really spammy and hard hitting, I guess, is now obviously it's not a direct competition. It's difficult to compare the two mons, but it's difficult to compare Ninetales with Toxicroak, obviously. But in a meta where speed feels quite important, Toxie it hits fairly fast, but it's just when it does hit, it's not quite as hard hitting as perhaps a weather ball user is. I don't know.
You can run both. You can run it with any weather ball user. That's a strat.
Run it with them all.
It's not blocking you from doing anything. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
And the key, we want spamming hard hitting mons, and Toxicroak really adds to that. And if you can basically get all the shields down and then just sweep, ideally, it's my plan.
That's my ideal as well. Yeah.
Toxicroak really adds to that. Yeah.
Just get rid of all their shields and then kill all their Pokemon.
Easy wins.
Toxicroak is really good
at
game.
I've been doing wrong. I've figured it out now, guys.
Toxicroak does have that ability endgame to take on two things, because it'll farm one thing down and then drop a sludge bomb on the other.
Yeah.
But it works. It works in similar ways to a similar monster, kind of like Frostlass from Nightfall, in that you want it to work best with energy and with shields. I mean, some can cope without that, but Toxicroak really needs that. So you kind of need to set it up right, essentially, with Toxicroak. But I feel like Toxicroak can be more of a safe switch here with the lack of psychics around. I mean, if you see a confusion user, then keep it hidden or something, like stay away.
Yeah.
But aside from that, you see on the team preview, is there going to be a confusion user there? If it's not, you think, wow, we could do some damage here. The other thing which is a bit of a problem is mud boys or general mud bombs from other things. Ground moves doesn't like taking too many of those. Mm-hmm. But aside from that, it could do work against anything.
I think. Oh, go on, Trudi. Were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was going to pick up on the thing that you said about running it next to another counter user, and actually, I think that's something that I like in this cup. Is that I've chosen Escav to run alongside Big, but having either being able to double up or having a slightly flexible move set or flexible weaknesses and flexible resistances, but still being able to cover the slot, I find is really, really useful. And I'm like, I might try again with Toxicroak, because yes, I know. Occasionally it does happen. We've got a sale. Trudy's changed her mind. It doesn't mean she was wrong the first time. It means both times, but she's changed her mind.
Changed your mind. Well, that's. I'll take that as a win.
Try it.
I was going to say the opposite kind of thing. Not that I wouldn't run Toxie, but with Vigoroth being, when we talk about ghosts and fighters like Toxie and things like Galvantula and maybe see a few Tropius knocking around, it feels to me like whenever you look at any Mon here, the first question, or often the first question, is how does it do against Vigoroth? And certainly in my mind, anyway. And so, in a sense, you're almost splitting the meta down in two right at the very beginning, to things that Vigoroth beats and things that Vigoroth loses against. So why not use Toxie as your only counter user, because it'll still, on the whole, beat the same things, but it also beat Vigoroth. And so you can perhaps be a bit more flexible with your other picks. That's maybe if you say beforehand you were looking at, right, I want 3 Vigoroth counters, now you only need to look at 2. Or
yeah, but the point of Vigoroth is that you don't need to put shields in it, and you just spam out, and that's not the point of Toxie.
No, but you've got weather ball users for that.
Yeah.
There's options for that. I mean, I don't recommend dropping Vigoroth, but I don't think it's completely out of the question.
I mean, this is a cup which is just very different from the last 2 we've had. There's a lot more kind of structure and team building involved here. You have to get the right 6. Something which maybe works for you might not necessarily work for somebody else, and it's just finding the holes in the team. And I think what you want is to make sure that you're not too weak to one of the common mons. So potentially, I think you kind of want maybe even 4 or 5 things which beat Vigoroth in your team, just so you're prepared for that. And that could be a wide variety of types. But as long as you kind of balance it out, and you're not too weak to something else that's very meta relevant. You're looking quite good here. I feel.
Yeah. Well, you need like 2 good counters to everything, right? But you probably, as you say, you probably want 4 or 5 to the stuff that's going to be on every single team. And Vigoroth is definitely that.
Yeah.
Also, I think going back to something Trudi said earlier, like right at the very start about building a team of mons that you love, in such a wide open meta, like there's got to be benefits to running things you're comfortable with and familiar with as well. And as you say, with Toxie's been good before on many occasions, it's good in GBL. But if Toxie's something you've used before a lot and you're happy with it and comfortable with it, this is as good a time to run it as any, because as you say, no confusion users, or very few confusion users. Yeah, that's often what I say when somebody sort of needs advice on a team. I kind of say sort of go with what you're comfortable with to start with, and then go from there. So if you used it a lot in GBL, then you know how it works, and because you're going to see so many different things here, that's kind of quite good prep for this. So
there's a sweet spot as well of stuff that you've maybe used a lot and that isn't common in, say, GBL or in other Silph metas, where you can know the matchups really well because you've played it day in, day out for a week or whatever, and your opponents won't know the matchups against it. So you can get a sort of information advantage where maybe people don't know how many bubbles it is to a Shadow Ball, or how many. We all know how many counters it is to a Sludge Bomb, I suspect. I don't.
It's a quiz.
The silence is deafening.
You know how long it feels in a GBL battle, though, so that's all that matters.
Yeah,
that's it.
Fair.
Yeah. And that information advantage is big as well, because I think Marsh Cup was one where a lot of people liked it, and I just decided for whatever reason I decided I didn't fancy it. But then when I looked at Sims and looked what it did with a 1 counter advantage, and all of a sudden you flip Galvantula, you flip Sableye, it's all of a sudden that information can be crucial, and it can certainly change how you view them on, as well as giving you an advantage. And having a second move like, well, if we compare it to Vigoroth, where the second move is Bulldoze, which is a little underwhelming, the second move on Toxie is Sludge Bomb, stab, nice and powerful, comes a little bit quicker. It can give you win conditions against most things as well.
Sludge Bomb hurts. It hurts to a lot of things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we've all at some point, if we've ever used the Hypno in GBL, at some point we've lost a game where, like, their Toxie came back in and landed a Sludge Bomb on a Hypno, despite being an awful matchup for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely, that big stab nuke from a really attacky mon.
Oh, I should point out Hypno's banned here, so no need to worry about Hypno.
Sure, but
Toxie's a dancing. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's one less thing for Toxie to worry about.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, confusion. I can't think of any good confusion users in this.
There's basically no confusion users really.
I've seen a couple of Bronzong, but not too many. I don't think it'll be common, but some person might use it. I don't know. Just they might think it's meta relevant.
Well, I feel like this is probably a good segue, unless anyone's got any final thoughts on Toxie.
No.
I just want to be really clear that there are no good confusion users here.
Uh-oh.
Well, I'll go next then.
Go for it.
I quite like the look of Gallade.
Oh really?
The renowned confusion user, Gallade. We all know about it from last month. I prefer the standard variant here to the Shadow, because as I keep going back to this, Weather Ball users, body slams, fairly tepid moves. These are the sort of moves you can take. So it's not like I'm going to be, it's not like you're going to be protecting your Gallade at all costs here. You can take a charge move. The reason I think it's quite useful is that because grass here is a little bit underwhelming, and I'm a little bit sad that Venusaur isn't as good as I was hoping it was going to be, and I'm even more sad that a huge contributing factor to that is that Charm is gone, and now Alolan Ninetales beats it. Like that makes me bleed inside. But what I like grass damage here to deal with Politoed, to deal with Stunfisks, to deal with Lanturns. Yeah. That's about it, isn't it? To be fair, but they're quite difficult things to counter, especially all in one. Because if we take Stunfisk for an example, outside of grass, there's not a huge amount of stuff that really wants to take on Stunfisk. Politoed again, unless you've got outside of grass. Unless you've got a dragon type to resist its water damage. I mean, yeah, you could use an electric type to beat it, but you're not resisting Politoed's damage. In fact, you've got to really worry about the earthquake. I believe Politoed beats Stunfisk in 1s and 2s because the weather ball is so spammy and it's so hard. So that's why I was initially looking at grass, because that's why I was initially looking at Venusaur, just to cover that really difficult to counter combination, and it picked up Vigoroth as well. And Gallade does that. Gallade, it beats Stunfisk, Politoed and Lantern in the 1s and 2s, and it beats Vigoroth and Alolan Ninetales in the 0s and 1s. So it's kind of what Venusaur would have been if Alolan Ninetales was running Charm. I guess it's a good way to describe it. Obviously, Dark
and
type
didn't have Weather Ball.
Yes, yeah. If Alolan Ninetales was what it was, yeah, okay, yeah, fair.
Well, pre-Weather Ball Ninetales.
Yeah, pre-Weather Ball Ninetales.
Yeah.
Gallade.
Crap
Sorry?
Crap tails.
Crap tails.
As opposed
Yes.
to tails.
Yeah. I like that. And of course, it doesn't have the. I mean, it does have a crippling Alolan Marowak weakness to breed out. Of course, it does. But if your opponent's got another ghost, their fire type's going to be not Alolan Marowak, and at that point, you're no longer weak to it. So it's not like the fire weakness. And in terms of dark types, which obviously Confusion users do have to worry about, it's got close combat. I think it does about 45% to Mandibuzz, which is the bulkiest dark type going. Isn't actually weak to it. So you've got an out there. But what I would say, given that the initial comparison here is to Venusaur, it's not like you're losing anything in that matchup. Like if your opponent's got a Mandibuzz, it would probably be ill-advised to run Venusaur anyway. Or it's certainly a matchup you don't want to get stuck in. So it's not like an added drawback, because that drawback was there anyway. It's an oddball really. I'm a bit concerned that it's a good mon on a 6 because it fills holes, but then it's difficult to fit on a 3. But I'm going to give it a go.
Oh. It's got a problem with Drifblim. That's another issue.
It does have a problem with Drifblim.
The problem is, does it beat? How's it do against Jellicent? Do we know?
I can run a quick save.
If it lands 2 Leaf Blades, I'm pretty sure it
Yeah.
lands. I doubt 1 Leaf Blade does enough.
No.
Maybe plus confusion damage as well.
Maybe.
Yeah, confusion hurts.
So
Obviously, it can't chew a Shadow Ball.
no,
Yeah.
so it just about loses the 1s, and just about loses the 0s. Sorry, and then it wins the 1s and 2s quite comfortably.
Okay. All right, that's good then. Okay, but
Makes sense, yeah.
But there's a lot of Ghost it struggles with.
Yeah,
which I don't know could be an issue.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
We have talked about Ghost and as of flying as being like really core. So if those are two separate picks, like it really doesn't enjoy either of those. Yeah, I mean, obviously.
I wonder if for coverage against the ghosts, instead of close combat, you could look at it gets a couple of psychic charge moves, doesn't it?
Synchronize.
Synchronize is legacy, but
worst community day move ever.
Yeah, is does it not get something like psychic?
Yeah, psychic and synchronize. Yeah, that's a good shout. I hadn't considered that because you still, it doesn't help versus the dark types, but realistically, that's
you weren't winning those anyway.
Yeah.
My feeling is if you do that, you're better off just running another psychic type, maybe.
But you don't get leaf blade.
You don't get leaf
blade, but you're not bringing something nearly as frail as Gallade, and stab psychic moves is still going to do a lot. Like just thinking Bronzong with Psyshock, that will still do a decent amount to things like. I mean, then again, Bronzong's weak to ground, so maybe that's not what you're looking for. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's because it just makes it difficult versus Stunfisk and Politoed. It makes those a bit sketchy.
I see.
I'd spent a long time looking at confusion users the other night. I specifically wanted confusion users that weren't walled by Mandibuzz, which was a bit of a stretch. I sort of picked out that Shadow Gardevoir wins the zeros versus Mandibuzz with Dazzling Gleam. Not if Mandibuzz is running Shadow Ball, of course, which some may. I don't know. I even at one point looked at Uxie because it has Thunder. But even that, as a 60 energy charge move, there's about half to Mandibuzz. So, yeah.
You were deep down a PV poke hole. You were really deep.
I was.
Were spiraling.
I've never even gone as far as Uxie ever.
Does Jirachi's fairy charge move give it any play against Mandibuzz?
Oh, I'm sure it would.
Or is it too slow?
No, I bet it would.
Too slow.
It's the same. It's the same length of time as it's Dazzling Gleam, isn't it? So it's the same one as Shadow Guards.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't hit hard enough. But again, similar to Bronzong, it's the ability to fill that niche of taking out the ground types. Where Jirachi's can slow down a little bit. It's an incredibly niche mon, but it's a hole. Yeah. Whenever I've been iterating through teams, it's a hole that keeps popping up, and I think the only way to find out whether it's a hole that needs to be filled is by running it. I think, and finding out whether I'm going to actually use it. But yeah, I'm gutted Cresselia was banned. I mean, obviously Cresselia would be. I feel like Cresselia would be busted. Yeah. Moonblast, Cresselia would be perfect. But
that's why it's banned, I guess.
That's why it's banned.
Yeah. But the problem with Gallade as well is it's taking up the fighting slot, and is it beating Vig?
Zeros and ones.
Okay, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe you want a fighter which would beat Vig more easily than that. I don't know.
See, I guess
I think fighting's a slot that you don't need to fill.
Agreed.
Yeah, I can see that. I've
got two counter users and neither of them are fighters, and I have just agreed to try Toxie as one of them. So I might humble pie, but it's not. It's
an option rather than necessity.
There's not strong competition for the fighting slot because many have been.
Yeah.
I mean, really, in a strange sort of way, the typing on Gallade doesn't matter. What matters is that it's doing grass damage and isn't weak to things that grass is weak to.
And Leaf Blade is good enough to overcome the lack of stab. I mean, it's the same stats as like if Body Slam gets stab, it becomes as good as Leaf Blade.
Right.
As Leaf Blade is without. So.
Yeah. And Gallade has a high attack anyway, so.
Yeah.
Those Leaf Blades do great chunks.
Yeah.
Mm. And we've seen historically Gallade do big things in open metas. I remember season 1 regionals a long time ago now. There was a lot of hype going around the sort of Gallade Haunter things, and it's got previous. It's not something like Toxie, which is, you know, a sort of poster boy of many metas in that gone by, but it's something. It's something which has been used, and it's proven that it can work. I just wonder whether it can work here. As I say, looks
It's
great.
Dark Horse a lot of the time, isn't it? It's sort of emerged as being a bit OP. It always needs bodyguards. What are you gonna guard it with?
Well, this is it. Mandy Buzz is the big issue here. So I think a Alolan Ninetales would be an awesome partner. I think Vigoroth obviously deals with dark types nicely enough. Regirock, I'm still umming and ahhing about. Shadow Zapdos and Galvantula sort of take out the flying types. I used Shadow Zapdos in a practice tonight, and it was as good as I hoped it would be. I really like it.
But Shadow Zapdos needs your shields. You can't use that in the same line of 3 as a Gallade, right?
That is a good point. That is a great point.
Yeah. There's a lot of things there which require shields, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well. Let's start with Alolan Ninetales and Vigoroth and go from there.
Owls won't last long with those things. The win after restarts.
Yeah. I don't know. The thing is, the Weather Ball users are great, but I'm trying to avoid them because Kanto Ninetales is walled by Politoed. Politoed is walled by, well, not a great deal, I guess, because there isn't much grass. You know, Alolan Ninetales is walled by Kanto. Now, you know, they're all these sort of like elemental types.
You don't like the RPS, yeah.
I'm not sure we'll see much Kanto Ninetales.
They're basic bitches. Sorry, Stuart, what was that?
They're really.
I'll just say I don't think we'll see that much Kanto Ninetales. I think AWAC might be more common. I mean, it's possible if they're not running AWAC, but I don't think they'll be that common. It's my instinct.
Yeah.
Go on, Trudi. What were you going to say?
All of your elemental types, they're basic bitches. They've only got one snap, and then they're done. You like a more complex Pokemon, don't you, Brewer?
You want options. You don't want to be stuck in basically one situation. You want one which can do more than one thing. I think.
Even Vigoroth, you're going into a fight intending to do 2 types of damage, fighting and normal. If you have to use Bulldoze on Vigoroth, something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
It might get you out of trouble, but it probably won't. Gallade is relatively. You can't be different levels of unique. Gallade is somewhat unusual in that you're going in intending to use all 3 moves. None of them are for situations you didn't intend.
Yeah.
They're all viable options.
Mm-hmm.
And that's relatively unusual. I think Politoed only carries 2 types of move. Kanto Ninetales often only carries 1 type. So yeah, I like that versatility.
Yeah.
It makes it less good at any one of those types because it's only got 1 move doing it.
Yeah, the versatility is very important here. Yeah.
And we spoke about. I know you mentioned Jellicent losing the zeros softly versus a lot of things. Like something that hits hard, like Stab Confusion, is pretty ideal for farming the remains of something. And on the other side of that coin, given that Leaf Blade is energy-wise, it's a fairly low damaging move. Well, it hits hard. I don't think Leaf Blade's a bit unique like that, isn't it? But it's not the hardest hitting move, and it's not stab. You're not going to be one-shotting things. You're leaving things. If you're not killing things, you're leaving them in that sort of range as well. And you know, at some point, you've got to draw the line and say, because you've got to kill things at some point. You can't if you leave everything on a little bit of health, you're going to lose, aren't you?
Yeah, you have to faint all 3 months at some point, right? That's
Yeah.
Guys, you teach me something every day.
that's still those are still the rules, right?
There's nothing worse than losing with like a tiny bit of HP on all 3 of the opponent's mons.
Right. Yeah.
That's really demoralising.
Yeah, it is. It's true. It's true. I think, and just the last thing, because I'm aware that I've gone on about Gallade for a while. It behaves a little bit like Galvantula, I think, and I think Galvantula's been quite popular in that if it's being walled, it's being walled, and there ain't much getting around that. But if it isn't, it's going to cause a bit of havoc. I mean, it's not got the debuffing against the next thing, of course, but it's got the versatility, as James was saying. Like perhaps.
I mean, yeah. So I was just going to say, I think one thing Gallade's got in its favour is I don't think it's quite as easy to wall as Galvantula. I think because of its moves, it's got a few. I mean, the only thing which really walls it is like a ghost type, or maybe a flyer. But even the flyers and ghosts, they still take decent damage from confusion most of the time. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, unless anyone's got any further thoughts, yeah, seems like a good place to leave it.